Hello and welcome to the Go One eLearning Assist. This is our first webinar where we're going to be helping you improve the way that you do your training and learning in your workplace. So just a bit of an introduction. What we're going to be doing is running one of these sessions every month, and they're going to be hosted by a different member of the Go One team spanning across the business. So every month, you'll get a different outlook and different perspective on online learning from various parts of the business. The format for each of these webinars is going to be, we'll have a short little presentation around a way that you can improve your learning, followed by a demo, and then we're going to be opening the floor up to Q&A. If you want to add any questions that you'd like us to answer, there's a little chat on the right-hand side of your screen at the moment. Just go in and drop your question in there, and then when we get to the Q&A part, we'll be able to jump in and answer that. Today, our very first host is Eduardo Gnomes, who is an account executive in the Brisbane office at Go One. So I'm going to kick over to Eduardo, who's going to give you a bit of a run through on some blended learning advice on how you can improve blended learning in your workplace. Eduardo, how are you going?
Good, and yourself, Scott?
Yeah, doing well, thanks.
Yeah, well, a pleasure to be part of the first one. I'm actually a crowdcast virgin, so if by any means I do anything wrong here, guys, forgive me. So it's all part of learning, I guess. After all, isn't it, Scott?
That's it. We'll get it better as we go.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So the main thing is that making sure that everyone can see my screen. Are you able to see this PDF that I put together?
Yeah, we can see that.
All right, perfect. All right. So when Scott and I were speaking about what sort of topics would be relevant and what sort of things would be a good idea for us to maybe start this, I thought about talking about blended learning, and one of the reasons is because in my role, let me just jump very quickly here. So I've been in learning and development. I've been a trainer for about 15 years. So I guess facilitating learning for over 15 years. And I'm now part of the Go One sales team, where I am in touch with organizations on a daily basis. So let's say over the last 2 years, I've easily spoke to more than 300 different organizations of all sizes. And one of the things that there's a few, I would say, barriers as well as misconceptions and confusion around the whole getting online, especially for organizations they are not, people tend to believe that, it's either one or the other. And sometimes have that idea that that e-learning will eventually replace face-to-face. And I honestly, personally, I don't think that's true. So that's why I'm talking about blended, because blended learning seems the ton of research that supports as being one of the most effective ways of delivering training across organizations. So in my role, I talk a lot about how organizations can utilize what they have now, and from that rethink ways to make learning and development more efficient. So beginning, obviously, we know that the landscape of learning is changing, and in reality, right? We all know this is no secret for anyone. So there's more information, there's less time. There's buzzwords that come up all the time, social learning, micro learning, bite-sized learning, and I see it all the time. There's always a new buzzword or a new trend, and I guess that makes people quite anxious about it. Should I jump on this? Is this what I should? I don't know. What is this social learning to begin with? There's new models, new methodologies, learning technology. New terms, the Chinkins, the SCORMs, XAPI, authoring tools. It's overwhelming, and especially overwhelming for organizations that are in the early stages of implementing or changing a learning strategy. But in reality, learning has always been a puzzle, right? So things are always going to change, and then part of the learning and development say role really is to navigate those changes and is to put things together. So this is something we talk a lot about in Go One. Actually, at least me and another person here talk a lot about this, which is you're probably familiar with this, with the circle of control or circle of influence and circle of concern. So in times where things are changing and changing quite rapidly, and you're overwhelmed, I guess it brings you back to thinking, where would you focus your attention on? Would you focus your attention on everything that is changing in the world, everything that you have pretty much no control of? And if you do, essentially, you just feel less empowered to make changes, right? And at a personal level, or organizational level. So whereas what I think we should focus on is focus on the areas that we can control, and focus on the areas that we can influence. And learning and development is a key area. Learning and development is something that we can always take control of, in my opinion. So I honestly think especially when things are changing quite rapidly, is a good time to stop and look at your mindset. And what I mean by mindset is, how do you approach the whole learning and development in the first place? And most of all, I do believe, and we are big believers, that culture is extremely important. So after all, it's all about culture. Now, I'm a little bit biased because learning is a passion. But if you really think about it, right, and you think about principles like total quality management, Kaizen, continuous improvement, in the heart of those principles, learning plays a big role. So I guess what we need to kind of backtrack a little bit and go back to basics and think, and not think about actually tools, and think about how we think about things and adjust mindset and develop that culture of learning and continuous improvement, I guess. Hope I didn't lose you there. But anyway, I honestly think that there's never been a better time for learning and development. I think L&D plays a more strategic, or should play a more strategic role in the organization, because technology has allowed us to eliminate or automate a lot of those administration tasks that no one enjoys, like marking an assessment, for example, or taking attendance of a course, or even registering when somebody has gone through a course. So technology removes a lot of the inefficiencies, and I think that's really exciting, and technology has never been more accessible. So there's a ton of things that we can be doing to improve. So jumping into the actual topic of blended learning. So one of the major concerns is that will be blend after all, right? And I guess it will, if you think about this strategically. So blended learning at the most common, as the most basic level, is the combination of online and face-to-face. We understand that it's a lot more complex than that, because online is so many things nowadays, right? There's social media, there is intranets, there is e-learning, there is mobile learning, gamification. There's a ton of things on the online space. And on the other side, face-to-face is also way beyond just a classroom experience. Face-to-face should take into account every face-to-face interaction across the organization, including time with your colleagues, questions that you ask around the office, time that you spend with your manager, and the conversion of the two, things like what we're doing right now, webinars, etc. So some of the benefits of blended learning. So to begin with, and this slide is not great, by the way, but anyway, so to begin with, it provides learners, or I guess it provides the organization with the best of both worlds. So it gives learners access to training resources 24/7, and leave trainers and facilitators with the opportunity to create more personalized learning experiences. Now, you all been to a classroom, you all been to a seminar or a workshop, and that you completely turn off, and you could be turning off right now, I don't know. But in reality is that face-to-face interaction, you can only, with that the classroom experience or that face-to-face training, you can always go so far. But by allowing that training to be placed online, people can just go back, rewatch it, and see the parts that are more interesting to them. And therefore frees up time for the training facilitator to go and have some meaningful conversations, and then put those learning plans into place. So the other bit is that tracking the learning and performance becomes a lot more convenient, a lot more easier, especially if you're using any sort of online assessment. It's easier to quality control the training as well. So you can then, let's say, giving an example. So if you're running a session online, if you're running a webinar online, then you could be recording that and go back and say, these are the things that I could have done better. But also you can go back and see what sort of training has been more utilized, more popular, what sort of areas they're more interest on as well. So it's definitely more cost effective. So improves the feasibility and return on investment of the training itself. It helps it's slicing down those expenses associated with traveling, logistics, and trainer fees. And it helps put standards around training as well. Now, one of the things for organizations, they are not yet delivering training online. So by taking a blended approach and combining some of the components of the course with a face-to-face and online, so it'll be a lot easier for you to deploy online learning after all. So, stopping here for a second, Scott, has there been any questions so far?
No one's asked any questions so far, but I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. So what are the best ways for people to get started with some of these principles, and how they might be able to implement them in their workplace?
Okay. So I've actually, it's funny you asked that. We have not planned it, but it is really what I'm about to talk next. So I guess before you start, right, you've got to go back to basics. And going back to basics, it could be very simply just thinking about what is learning for? Why, the why of the learning in the first place. Is it for knowledge acquisition? Is it for skill development? Is it for changing behavior or mindset? Is it to mitigate risks? Do you need people to memorize that information? Do you need people to rehearse and practice before they go and perform that task in the workplace? So it's very important to get your objectives right before you even think about the modality. So the next bit that I think is extremely important, because you're training adults, so adult learners. Adult learners, there's a key thing about adults is that adults learn to solve problems, and if whatever it is that we are exposing, the information I'm exposing doesn't relate or is not relevant to me, I will switch off. So make sure that learning, I guess, which brings me to the next point. So make sure that the learning is targeted and is in alignment with strategic direction and business goals. So this is a little bit messy here. Let me try to just simplify it. So think about, so again, it's all about starting with the end mind, thinking about the end goals, the business goals, and then backtracking and saying what sort of pieces are missing, right? So this bit in the middle represents barriers, and barriers are usually a lack of skill, a lack of knowledge, a poor methodology, certain behavior, attitude, desire, etc. So what it is that we need, what sort of learning, or how we're going to break down the journey from here to now, and map out what learners need to learn to begin with. Did that make sense, Scott?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. You need to define your goals and then figure out the stepping stones to be able to get there. I think that's definitely a good plan of attack to get there.
Excellent. Now, the other bit, which I get a lot, I get a lot of when I'm talking to clients is that, let's say deploy a new learning program, but the uptake was actually quite low. Now, one of the key factors is that if you don't focus much on the actual learner experience or how the learners will be taking that information, whether it would be pleasant for them in the first place, people would most likely switch off. So especially with your online component. So ask yourself, does this system that I'm implementing provides a great user experience? If it's too hard to use, it's likely that people will get frustrated and learning becomes painful. Also, very important, especially with the online components, actually not just with online components, but ensuring that the assessments or whatever, the ways that you're going to test learning is in alignment with the objectives of the course to begin with. Most people will want to know that when they started a program, at the end of it, they've actually achieved the goal that the program was set to do, right? I guess. Now, another component which is very important is that feedback is incorporated, be it automatic feedback or be it feedback with manager or a trainer, facilitator, mentor, etc. And now, very, very important is often overlooked is integrated follow-up. Now, what I mean by that is, let's just assume that before you run a workshop, right? You get people to go through some of the course materials. You run the workshop, and then after the workshop, you just don't do anything about it, right? So one of the ways to ensure that the information is remembered and then applied back into the workplace is to integrate some sort of follow-up training. Be it a catch-up or be it another module that happens after the face-to-face interaction, if that makes sense. Still with me, Scott, and everyone else?
Yeah, I think that's really important to emphasize that follow-up and making sure that is reinforced over time, and it's not just a one-off learning experience. You've got that sustained learning that happens throughout the process.
Correct. All right, and the other bit, and changing a little bit the topic here, and it's hard to read. You just realize that. A lot of times, when you're developing, especially the online components of the course, think that sometimes, having that perfect e-learning program would actually slow down the learning of your organization. So try tapping into things that already exist. Try tapping to off-the-shelf content, but make sure you mix that with your own. Now, another thing that I'm a big believer of is don't reinvent the wheel. There are ways of there's a lot of expert content out there and ways of curating that content. So just a couple of examples here, Chrome extensions, a way of saving content for future deployment, or using something like Get Pocket. Now, another suggestion I give is develop rapid content development, ways of developing your content quite rapidly. So, for example, if you're combining the online with face-to-face and again running a webinar, now why not record the webinar? We do that a lot at GoOne, so we'll record sessions and then we put those sessions up for people to go and refer to. And it could be that you're recording, let's say if we're talking about product training, could be that you're recording videos or screencasts of your product. Now, thinking a little bit outside of the box, why not incorporate something like a weekly newsletter, or even run a few podcasts internally. Essentially, that could be L&D, or that could be manager or topics of interest and pretty much just recording voice and broadcasting that throughout the organization. Now, I've talked about this before, but just touching base again. So a way of improving the training ROI is with utilization of pre-course assessments, quizzes, and follow-up sessions. Remembering that a lot of training, also a lot of learning happens informally. So putting a strategy in place so that you can support it. And a few ideas here could be, one of them is enabling your leaders to be better trainers, to be coaches and mentors. I found that sometimes can be an issue where you are appointed to a leadership position, but you don't realize that with that it comes the training of someone, the training of your staff, and often is what we rely on the immediate leader in the first place. So by enabling leader to become a better coach or a better mentor or even trainer, will actually come a long way. Developing forums or communities of practice and incentivizing collaboration. That could be done through things like blogs and, as I say, forums, or simply just group discussions. But mostly just bringing it all together. So essentially ensuring that, well, whatever is the system you use, that represents your learning ecosystems, and it brings everything together for the learner. It makes their life easier, I guess. And that's what I had planned for this first part, and I think we may have gone a little over time.
I think it was really useful. That was great, Eduardo. A lot of information in there that people can take away and really start to have a think about that might improve the way that they're running their learning program at the moment.
Excellent.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll let you start prepping for the second part. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to do a demo in the Go1 system. Something we get asked about all the time is course creation. So we want to make a first demo around the basics in how to get started with course creation. So what we're going to do here is Eduardo is going to run you through how to create your first course, how to set everything up, and some best practices that you might be able to put in place as you're doing that. Now, don't forget, we do have the live chat running on the right-hand side of your screen at the moment. If you have any questions about the blended learning information that we just ran through, or course creation that we're about to go through, just drop them in there and we can address your questions as we're going through to make sure you get the answers that you need that can actually help you. How are we going, Eduardo? Ready to kick off?
I'll be in a second. Just gotta make sure we'll work out how do I share my screen again.
Yep, that's okay. So while we're waiting, if anyone has any topic they would like us to cover in demos, feel free to let us know. When you see the emails going out on a regular basis, just shoot us a reply and say, hey, I'd like to see a demo on how to create a report covering this. And we'll make sure that's included in the next time we do the eLearning Assist. All right, looks like you're ready to go, Eduardo. Let's hit this.
Yeah, great. All right, so you can see the Go1 Learning portal here. I just want to make sure that you can see the same screen as I can.
That's right.
All right, cool. All right, yeah, so very basic around course creation. Now, some of the principles, we were just discussing before, but I guess what I had planned to do is just simply to give you a run through on how you create your own courses in Go1 using the resources that you've got available. So essentially what I've done here is I've logged into one of my portals. And what I'll do next, what you need to do is jump into the administrator section. And then from here, you click on courses. And then you create a course. So very, very basic. What I would have done before that, I would have made sure that I have an outline of the course. So make sure that, the course title, the different sections of the course, how you want to break down that content, it's all set up in a document. And from here, and then you can just start. It's a very, very simple process. So essentially, I'm just going to call this demo course. So it takes me right into the actual course page. Now, one of the things I would recommend is obviously adding a banner or a picture on top, just so that the course will look a little bit nicer. Where is my screen? Apologies. Resources. All right, so I'll just pick this one here for now.
Yep. Fun fact on that is that you can actually set a GIF as your course card as well. So
correct.
If a user wants to set a GIF, they can have that moving image up there too.
Yeah, well, from here, I will just go down into the about this course. So this is where you are preparing the learner and saying, what is this course really about? So what I recommend you do is that you, first of all, put a description of the course. Oops. And then ensure that the learning outcomes are described. And then as well as how long the course should take to complete. Now, after you do that part, then you can start breaking it down into sections. Now, the breaking down into sections is only necessary if there is multiple or many resources that the learner will need to go through. So essentially, we call it a module 1, so section 1 or module 1. We're pretty much just giving it a title. Now, if you're going to add another one, section 2, and you can add, what I think is a good idea, is start adding the resources from here. So what I do is I tend to add all the titles first. So let's say if I wanted to add a video, so I'll go with the video. And then maybe I want to add a PowerPoint. And let's say I may want to have a quiz attached to this as well. All right. Now on the second one, again, I'm going to have another video just because it's simpler. And one of the things I would recommend you do is if you want learners to go through the first section before moving into section 2, I would recommend you changing the configuration here and making and creating the module dependency. So basically, you've got to go through module number 1 before you go through the second one. Now, with the blended approach, what you could be doing is you could be adding an event. And let's say we call this masterclass. Putting a start date, 24, 12, date and time. And we go 3 p.m. Now, if there is a physical location, adding the address. So let's just call Go1 headquarters. And establishing the number of seats as well. So let's say we call it 15. So what's going to happen here is going to create an event here on top. And then learners will then be able to register to attend that event. Now, at a basic level, that's what you need to do. So I'm just going to click on done now, just make sure it all looks nice and neat. So you can see how easy it was. So essentially, I've created an empty shell now. And what I need to do is I need to start adding the content. Now, what I was referring to before, so let's say you recorded a webinar and you think that webinar it's a great resource. So what you could be doing is you could be uploading the webinar. Just be mindful of the megabytes here. It's 100 megabytes. So if you need to compress that, we can give you ideas on how you can compress that video. But let's say if I were to pick just a YouTube video, now start with why. And essentially, you can just simply copy and paste that. So that's what I meant before by utilizing existing content. Now, moving on to PowerPoint. Then simply just dragging and dropping a PowerPoint file or a PDF file. So I'll do now. I'll just drag a PDF, just simpler. I'll call that PDF. And again, we want to save that. And then move on to the next. And setting up your quiz. Now, depends whether you want if you want somebody to assess the learner, then it could be using something like a long answer question. Or if you don't, let's say we don't in this case, and we're just going to delete that. We just want to make the marking automatic. So all you've got to do is then add a multiple choice question, which is one that could be marked, or potentially a matching question or a fill the blank. So I'll just add a couple of multiple choice questions. Now, after you add the question, you've got to make sure that you jump in. Then you put a title. So the title is what's going to help you remember what that question is about. So let's say, what is why? We'll just call it why in sales. That's related to that video. And then typing in your question. Why was oops. And you're typing your questions, then here the answers. I'm just gonna type anything here just for the sake of the demonstration. We just gonna go yes or no. Should have picked an easy answer. And then make sure you select which one is the right answer here. Now, there are things that you can do as far as configuration. You can randomize the order of the questions. Let's say if somebody misses the question and doesn't get it right, when they reattempt, those answers will then be mixed up. Now, one of the things that's very important is to change the configuration here. And here you can do things like setting a time limit, or stipulating how many times somebody could actually take that question. Obviously, very important is to set up the pass rate, so you get so the person knows whether the knowledge, whether they've achieved the benchmark. Another thing which I would recommend do is to having a feedback to the learner based on the score that the learner had achieved. So let's say if the learner went from, let's say, 0 to 40%, then they will get X feedback. Now, if they went from maybe 41% to 65%, then they will get a different message. And again, of course, if they pass it, so over, let's say we go about 100, then congratulations or something like that. Now, with the feedback, I would think about what would be valuable to the learner, so the learner can actually learn from that experience, if that makes sense. Scott, just checking in, how are we doing for time?
I think we probably want to wrap up shortly. We're starting to run out of time.
Yeah, okay. So is this straightforward? Any questions about this so far?
We've had no questions through. I think that's a pretty good explanation, though. You've done a good job walking through that, showing how to add the content, pulling in an event. If anyone does have questions through there, they can also email us or use the live chat in Go1 as well to talk to one of our customer success reps who can walk you through the process on that as well. We also have some blog posts that go into a little bit more detail around individual learning items and how you can configure those. So they should be a bit of additional help for that as well. Was there anything else you wanted to add on to that, Eduardo?
Yeah, just very, very briefly. One of the things that we're talking about bringing it all together. So what we've done with this Go1 system is we made it very flexible. So under the Explore tab here, you can see there are different types of learning objects that you could be adding to the system. And I'll just quickly explaining with the self-paced, those will be for purely online courses. So learner takes their course in their own time. Schedule is the one that I just created. So you can see here how I've got a schedule course there. And when I click on schedule, it should show the upcoming training. Now, another one which I think is really important is just learning resources. So when you are there curating resources and then finding things that are really relevant to specific users, specific job roles, why not just add them into this learning resource tab and potentially help the learner identify or find those resources by tagging those resources. So let's say if this was about blended learning, I can just simply just add a tag to this, which will help the learner identify or find that content a lot faster. The last bit that I want to talk about, and just going back, let me just save and exit and go back to explore, is a feature called awards. Now, I think awards is great because it gives the learner flexibility. So the learner then has, well, so for example, right, I created an award called Complex Sales. So basically, as part of this award, I've got a combination of courses and resources that make up the building blocks of complex sales. So what I've done here, I've utilized some of the content that I created on this site, but I've picked up content out of Go1's marketplace, which is a very large off-the-shelf library. So, for example, if I wanted to add a new course to this award, right? I could just simply go into view all and type in the topic. So let's say complex sales. And then essentially picking up courses that I think are of excellent quality. And then we can help you review the content as well. So before you before you select it. But essentially what I've done is I've added an existing course and I've added another option for learners to develop that skill.
And for those asking about awards, I think what we might do is do an in-depth session on that in one of our upcoming e-learning assists, where we can show you the full range and power that you can get out of using awards within the Go1 system.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. Okay. I think we might wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Eduardo, for coming and spending some time with us this morning and running through all of this stuff. I think that's been really helpful for everyone that's watching and listening to be able to learn all that stuff.
Yeah, no problems, mate. First one, as I say, I'm a Chromecast virgin, so yeah. So next time, we're sure what we're learning from it, and we'll do it better.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you for everyone for tuning in today, whether it's on the blog or live. We're going to be running another session at the end of next month. If you have any topics that you would like us to cover, please hit us up on the website and tell us what you want to hear, because we'd love to cover the information that you want to know about. But other than that, have a good day, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
See you, everyone.